start with the WNBA Draft Lottery, Brendon. Here's the order for the 2024 WNBA Draft. The Indiana Fever, for the second year in a row, have the number 1 pick. The LA Sparks at 2. The Mercury at 3. The Storm at 4. As compared to the odds, the Fever held chalk. The Sparks jumped to 2. The Mercury slipped to 3. And the Storm held at 4. So, Brendon, you look at this WNBA lottery, which is the Caitlin Clark lottery more than anything else, even if there are a lot of other great players in this class. What's your instant reaction?
It's very bipolar. I have the Mercury fandom in me, the Phoenix sports fan in me that is very disappointed to not have this generational talent in my backyard where I would get to cover her, celebrate her achievements, watch her career from very close. You know, I texted you, kind of feels like the Mercury got the third pick in a 2-player draft. Not to, discredit. This is going to be a much better draft than most, so they'll get a good player. But that was disappointing. I mean, I can't lie to you. Big picture, I think this has to be about Caitlin Clark and where she goes, whether she comes out, I guess I should say, and what that means for the WNBA, because this is a lottery, this is a day that could define an era for the WNBA. And how she chooses to act based on this new information that she has, which is where she will be playing, is going to define a lot about where this league heads. She is that type of star.
What she wants to do, and we have some early quotes from her from earlier in the year about if she would want to play or not in the WNBA immediately go. She wasn't saying, I'm immediately going to go. I'm definitely going to the W, because she does have that 5th year due to the pandemic. The couple quotes are, quote, I'm going to go based off my gut. At the end of the day, that's the biggest thing I think I should trust. I'm going to know when I need to know if I want to stay or if I want to go. She also said, quote, it's not something I let weigh on me. I'm focused on helping this team, the Iowa team, be the best team they can be, and when I know that decision, all of you will know. I think the biggest thing will be that I'm just going to trust my gut and go with that. So she wasn't committing to saying, I'm going no matter what.
The biggest quote's at the top of what you have in our notes, which is that she's treating this year like her last year. That's probably the most telling thing as far as anything I've seen her say, is she is going to treat this as if it is the end, and then if that's not the case, we'll find out. But to me, I just have to assume she's leaving. And they had some good conversation, I thought, on the lottery broadcast, Chris, about this, which it feels like there's this idea now that NIL is only available to college players because we talk about it so much with college players. When if you go on Forbes or a ton of these other websites, people like Michael Jordan, LeBron James, Tiger Woods, more than their NBA or golf salary was endorsements for as long as sports has been huge in this country. Caitlin Clark is going to make a significant amount of money doing commercials and brand deals and partnerships, whether she's at Iowa or Indiana or anywhere else. So I think that's a little bit overblown. I think that it's easy to make jokes about the Fever, and I actually do want to talk about them versus some of these other teams a little bit, but the league is better if a team like the Fever can build something sustainable and profitable around Aliyah Boston and Caitlin Clark, right? Like,
yeah. Oh, yeah. And Alyssa Smith.
Yeah, and Alyssa Smith, sure.
Like that like they are in a spot now, Brendon, like, and I know what you're going to say, but like that roster in terms of talent, even if there are still, I think the organization has to prove itself. Like the roster is trending towards being in a better shape just because of the high-end talent, but I mean led by Aliyah Boston, but they have other good players at this point where it's not just as bleak as it was. Like they didn't miss, on a high pick like they've done in recent years or in several times in recent years. Like the roster is at least getting to a spot where you're saying, okay, like we have more than just one promising player here. Like Aliyah Boston on her own right was the well-deserving Rookie of the Year, is a great player, another great college storied player. Like they're in a good spot roster-wise, I think, with some room to grow. But Aliyah Boston, Alyssa Smith, Kelsey Mitchell has been a pro for a bit now. Like you have something there at the very least, even if there's certainly room to add more and figure some of this out.
and they need a playmaker. Like, she is kind of exactly what this roster needs. So it's easy to kind of turn to the jokes and everything else, but they have a new head coach. They brought back Lynn Dunn, who was the head coach for a long time there, won a championship, and is now kind of overseeing the basketball operation. But this organization is cheap. Pacers, Fever, we know that. Like, they're the go-to team you make jokes about when you're talking about small market cheapness, right? They couldn't keep Paul George. The WNBA makes it easy to be decent because there's quite a bit of, there's only so many teams. You're going to win the lottery. There's only 4 teams in the lottery. Talent is at the highest possible level with so few teams, everything else. And they've still been pretty bad for a long time. But if they can just build something real here, that's for the better interest of the WNBA. The question is, does Clark feel it's in her best interest? Does she feel like going there would actually limit her earnings in some of these other places? Does she feel like she's setting herself up developmentally to not be her best? I think all that is an open question and a fair question. So I'm rooting for the Fever to figure this out. I'm rooting for Clark to declare for the draft, for them to take her, for them to go to the playoffs next year and build a championship contender. But I think it's absolutely fair to doubt that that's possible given both the Pacers and Fever recent track record under their ownership, which is Herb Simon, who also just sold, which is another factor in all of that, like a 10% stake. So the structure and the stability of what's facing her in Indiana, I think it's absolutely reasonable for her to question it and want some answers.
Yeah, I think the potential investment from Stephen Rails is who already own part of the organization. I mean, him disagrees that maybe that just means they're going to spend more money, and there's a positive here. I would say 2 things really excite me about this. Well, I'm going to say 3 things really excite me about this. Number 1, Indianapolis is a big winner here. Caitlin Clark potentially and Tyrese Halliburton playing basketball in the same city rules. But that's just an amazing thing for that basketball
and very similar.
Both really big, both really creative, both play it at their own paces in distinct ways. Like, that's an amazing thing for that basketball the basketball Mad State, that basketball Mad State. That in itself, I think, is very cool. Secondly, Aliyah Boston gets a playmaker to help her. And, Caitlin Clark will be the best player on the team in short order, but, this is, a really good nuclear foundation for that franchise. That's great. I think Caitlin Clark's ceiling is higher. I don't know if she'll be better right off the bat, but the ceiling, I would say, is higher.
Yeah.
I
mean, you just think about what the centers that Iowa has had for her, and Monica Zanano was a very college player, right? The 5-year senior that they've had up until this season, she's now gone. I think she's going to be a dentist. That tells you everything you need to know, right? 5 years at Iowa, scoring on the low block, dentist. You put that as Aliyah Boston, and it's like, damn, you're off to the races. So their fit is very cool and very fun, and I do think is the kind of foundation that could, I would probably pick them to go to the playoffs right away if Caitlin Clark declares. They're there already. They were kind of teasing at that already.
Thirdly, I think even if I think the rest of the roster does need an overhaul and to be figured out. I do think just getting a real playmaker in there can get you towards a place where maybe you can figure out if some of these other players you have can be salvaged to some degree and just boosted by the fact that there's just a league creator to get them better looks. I mean, I think of someone like Lexi Hall, who has not had a good WNBA career at all. The numbers are horrendous, but was a productive 4-year college player who shot it well in college and hasn't shot it well at the W at all. Can you manufacture something? Can you get more out of her just by the fact that you brought someone in and that help that at least get some more out of the value that you had among your roster just because you have someone in there to actually provide the playmaking structure that is so important. That can just be it's a tertiary benefit if it even happens, but that's the kind of thing I think this kind of playmaker can provide from you. I also do, Brendon, like that, we kind of know now, and I'm sure she'll decline to talk about it a lot, and there's no reason for her to give an answer right away. She has a lot of college basketball left to play this year, She's a lot she wants to accomplish at Iowa, but I'm curious to just see, like, over time, like, what kind of stories we get about the recruitment of her to some degree to get her to come. Because I not only the Pacers, the Indian ownership, but Kathy Engelbert, and what do the very many companies that work with her and will want to work with her want to say? Like, I'm sure, like, she's gonna get a shoe deal. So is Nike like, hey, like, we want to make you the face of our WNBA thing, our WNBA program. I know we have Sabrina in Asia, but can we make you one of the lead people that will give you your own shoe from day one? Like, there's things here that are going to be really fascinating to follow on a whole bunch of fronts.
And that's why I ultimately think she declares. Combining the fact that those endorsements will transfer, like you're saying, the amount of pressure, and that's where it comes in handy to have somebody like Aliyah Boston. That she seems like a person I would want to be a teammate with. Like, say anything else you want about her skill set. Like, let me go play with her. And she was like an all-star right away, not to mention, on top of being a very kind soul, seemingly, from everything that you see in a like pretty competitive, fiery person to play against and with. But I guess that brings me to another question that I had for you, which is, I mean, I'm thinking of it from the Phoenix standpoint because we know how the Suns have operated under new ownership. What are the calls like between the Mercury and Matt Ishbia and Herb Simon and Lynn Dunn over in Indiana? How much is being offered to move up from 3 to 1? Is it like a retirement home for Lynn Dunn in Phoenix? Is it like an island for Herb Simon to retire to when he decides to sell and he's already a pretty older guy? Just some place in the Bahamas for him to camp out the rest of his life? Like, how high are we going here? Because I think it's all the first-round picks and whatever you want from the roster, but then it's like, can we get some real estate deals, some stock options? What's going on here?
Yeah, mortgage rate that's like not subject to the very high interest rates we're currently having right now. On I got 30
all legal though, of course.
Yeah, totally above board. Nothing sketchy about this. 100%. I mean the fever though should just like hang up the phone. Like that's really the answer. I mean, you already have Erica Wheeler who just tweeted 12 minutes ago. I don't know if you've seen this. Now I can @ Clark, she writes. What's up? ! At Caitlin Clark 22. What you trying to do? The word is out now. Eyeballs emoji.
I love it. And I mean, yeah, the WNBA side of it that you mentioned is the tricky one, but that's why I started the way that I did. The best case scenario for the league and for everybody involved is that whatever we thought the Sparks or the Storm or the Mercury could be with her, the Fever just become that, right? Like, all sports are better when all the teams are competitive and lucrative and popular and famous and everything else, but it'll be a fascinating, I think you're right, negotiation and recruitment process from all sides. The good thing for Clark is she just has the bailout of, I don't know if I'll even be the number 1 overall pick. Like, that's the easy way to answer those questions, because if you answer it, then you're just like assuming, I'm better than everybody else. So I'll be number 1, and we'll see what happens from there. Like,
Angel Reese beat me in the title game last year. Paige has been great for a long time. Cameron Brink is a star. Like, we have so many great options in this draft. Exactly. I can't guarantee. Like, why would I presume that I'm going number 1?
PR 101, baby. We just did it for her.